On February 23, 2022, the University of London released a series of files that have shed quite a bit of light on ThesisGate. The files were emails between LSE and the University of London trying to locate Ty's thesis. From them, we see the school's new Ty's thesis wasn't in any library as early as July 2011. There were no physical or digital records of the thesis. The strange thing is, as one librarian searched for Ty's thesis, LSE's Research Degrees Examination Unit stepped in and said Ty's old files were in the school's archives. Additionally, the school's transcript office did not hold Ty's student files, though they were also later found in archives, even though the archives have long said they do not store student information. Back in 2011, the school's explanation was that it followed up with Ty's examiners and supervisor for 1.5 years on the whereabouts of 2 copies of her thesis. What happened to those 2 copies is unknown. A 3rd copy was accounted for and said to have been sent to the University of London along with 2 record forms, but it's also unclear what happened to that copy of the thesis. In 2011, the wrongdoers somehow infiltrated email records to propagate the notion that there were indeed 3 copies of Tsai Ing-wen's thesis in 1984. When Tsai was up for election in Taiwan's 2016 presidential election, the University of London went one step further to cover for her. In 2015, the University of London's transcript office disclosed that there was a defunct higher degrees office that would have handled inquiries into Tsai's degree. The transcript office said it had no way of looking into Tsai's degree but did refer inquirers to a mysterious 3rd person. This 3rd person distorted the outcome of the 2011 search for Tsai's thesis. They said that there were 3 copies of Tsai's thesis. 2 were returned to LSE while 1 was sent to IALS on June 15, 1983. Following that, the University of London's efforts to cover for Tsai escalated. Who is this mysterious 3rd person and what was their role at the University of London? It's obvious the University of London is now covering for Tsai. In this episode, we will continue to unravel the secrets behind this conspiracy and unearth the truth. We revealed last episode that in 2015, this mysterious person began responding to all inquiries about Tsai Ing-wen at the school. They made many claims that both the University of London and LSE could rely on as proof that Tsai's thesis existed. The first email this person sent misled the LSE librarian who inquired about the thesis. They established a story that claimed 2 copies of Tsai's thesis were returned to LSE, but not the University of London. This is not how the 2011 review of Tsai's thesis ended. The end of that email said that 1 copy of Tsai's thesis was sent to the Institute of Advanced Legal Studies on June 15, 1983. After that, on July 2, 2015, one inquirer, possibly from Taiwan, pointed out that Tsai's thesis was available on ProQuest, and that might have been an indication of unethical business practices. However, in reality, the ProQuest entry for Tsai's thesis was LSE's attempt at academic dishonesty. The inquirer asked LSE Law School about what happened to the thesis. They received another email from our mystery spokesperson saying that they could not respond to questions about Tsai's thesis without her consent. With the University of London and LSE handled, the wrongdoers still had loose ends to tie up at IALS. The mysterious email writer wanted to use correspondence to create the illusion that IALS had records. On July 29, 2015, the mysterious spokesperson sent an email to IALS that said, "I wonder if you can help me. The LSE are trying to track down a copy of Dr. Tsai's PhD thesis. Please see highlighted sections below. Apparently, one copy was sent over to the Institute of Advanced Legal Studies, but the institute no longer has a copy. Could you please confirm this or shed any light? I appreciate it was some time ago." The email implies that the IALS indeed received a copy of Tsai's thesis and goes a step further, asking IALS to attest to that claim. The motive here is very clear. IALS responded on August 10, 2015. I have checked with Blank, who has been in charge of IALS Library's collections for many years. She cannot find any information about the thesis, Unfortunately, we no longer have acquisitions records for theses from the 1980s. As you no doubt know, the thesis isn't on the IALS library catalog. Blank checked the shelves where the 1980s theses are kept, just in case, but didn't find it. I am sorry we haven't been able to find any useful information. It is rather mysterious. Why did the University of London and LSE's correspondence over Tsai's thesis end here? The email chain ends here. It's clear why. Tsai's thesis never existed. In both 2011 and 2015, searches for Tsai Ing-wen always ended in the same place. It doesn't matter if someone claimed IALS had Tsai's thesis. IALS cannot attest to that story at all. It's clear that the mysterious spokesperson holds a high position. The University of London and LSE adopted their version of the story in 2015, thus protecting Tsai from scrutiny. In 2022, the University of London blamed the missing thesis on careless librarians, but from the email records we see that the thesis flat out does not exist. It turns out librarians were the ones who wanted to know what happened to Tsai's thesis the most. With someone distorting the truth from the inside, the University of London and LSE are releasing contradictory information. Fake information is muddling reality. The silver lining is we see that the mysterious spokesperson does not have enough sway to influence IALS. We see the truth from IALS's responses in the email chain. IALS's email responses in 2015 and the University of London's initial understanding of the situation in 2011 is the same. Neither establishment's libraries had a thesis called Unfair Trade Practices and Safeguard Actions written by Tsai Ing-wen. There were no digital records nor any records indicating a thesis had been submitted. Though the mysterious spokesperson tried to promote the falsehood that a physical thesis was sent to IALS, IALS completely shot down that possibility. Next, it's also clear that the mysterious spokesperson is well aware of what's going on. In their email, they asked the IALS to look into a copy of Tsai's thesis. They didn't indicate when the thesis was sent to IALS. That's because IALS did indeed previously receive a Tsai Ing-wen thesis, the one that Tsai's group tried to smuggle into the library in June 2011. The mysterious spokesperson knew about this, but they wanted IALS to say it on record. Luckily, IALS knew that the 2011 smuggling incident was not a legitimate submission. That's why their response to the email with the subject line PhD LSE Law Thesis 1984 is so pivotal. They did not fall for the email scam. The mysterious spokesperson said records showed a copy of Tsai's thesis was sent to IALS on June 15, 1983. However, IALS did not even address that point in its email response. That's because there was nothing to prove that date was legitimate. The timing was all off. IALS stayed the course and didn't respond to the emailer's claim. June 15, 1983. This date is probably most likely related to the record found by the University of Tokyo student who said they found Tsai's thesis listed in an IALS database from 1985. However, as mentioned before, that database cannot attest to a proper degree. Chinese scholar Li Haimuo pointed out that Tsai's thesis was referred to as legal control on international competition in a transitional world in February 1983. Unfair trade practices and safeguard actions popped up in February 1984. There is nothing that can substantiate the claim that Tsai's thesis was sent to IALS on June 15, 1983. If the 1985 database can act as proof of a degree, then why wouldn't the database's publisher, IALS, vouch for the thesis behind Tsai's degree? The only thing the wrongdoers wanted through the emails was to have IALS on record saying it once received a copy of Tsai's thesis. That would have been enough for them to spin a narrative in their favor. They did the same thing in 2019. IALS did not fall for this trap. IALS has always maintained that it did not have Tsai's thesis. Included in the University of London files is a record of Tsai's thesis in the ProQuest database. It has supposed information on Tsai's thesis. ProQuest collects and compiles proper theses. An individual cannot send a thesis into ProQuest. Only schools can coordinate a thesis submission. What's strange here is that the ProQuest files show it didn't log Tsai's thesis until 2009. If the school sent Tsai's thesis to ProQuest in 2009, then why would it forget all about it by 2011? Could it be that LSE started cooperating with Tsai in 2008 after it separated from the University of London system? Did the school enact some nefarious plot to help Tsai? Is that why no one else talked about the ProQuest database entry during subsequent examinations into her thesis in 2011 and 2015? Isn't something like getting a thesis into ProQuest something worth noting? It wasn't until 2015 that someone from outside of the University of London would mention the ProQuest entry. Only then would LSE and the University of London address ProQuest at all. Ultimately, this begs the question, why would ProQuest have information on Tsai's thesis if not a single school in London had information on the thesis first? When the mysterious spokesperson tried to press IALS further about Tsai's thesis, the IALS librarian pointed out something pivotal. I have looked along the shelves for the 1980s in L204 and cannot see the name. Why is the subject area in ProQuest given as psychology, bibliogs, and statistics? Why was a law PhD thesis filed under psychology and statistics? It's clear that the vigilant librarians at IALS found the information rightfully suspicious. Don't be fooled. Tsai Ing-wen's people were the first ones to bring out this ProQuest entry. It first surfaced on PTT on June 19, 2015, in response to the Xingdao Daily editorial that said Tsai's thesis could not be found. The ProQuest entry was later turned into an internet graphic which claimed to disprove the idea Tsai's thesis was fake. The graphic was widely circulated and used to debunk fake news. Tsai's people were pushing psychological operation campaigns as early as 2015. The initial poster to PTT was most definitely part of Tsai Ing-wen's cyber army. They were quick to react, like Li Zizong and Wang Dingyu, when they pulled out images of Tsai's diploma. Such swift counteroffensives served to prove just how serious a threat ThesisGate is to Tsai. Of course, the ProQuest entry is completely fake. We've detailed in our show before how Tsai manufactures doctored files. From thesis drafts to altered dates, this is nothing new. ProQuest even once showed two different thesis titles under Tsai Ing-wen's name. One was labeled 1983, the other 1984. It's clear that Tsai has connections at ProQuest who can alter their records. Remember the person who might have been from Taiwan who inquired about Tsai's thesis? They were very courteous, but they also hinted that they suspected foul play. Their email reads, "In addition, I was told that the US database company ProQuest might have one copy of the dissertation I am looking for. So I am wondering if you can answer me the following question. Did your department or the author of that dissertation ever authorize ProQuest to have your graduates' PhD dissertations before? The reason I ask this is because I do not want to be another victim of commercial strategy. I am not saying that ProQuest might be a fraud or something. My point is, it is unreasonable for me to expect ProQuest to have the dissertation I am looking for, since I cannot find that dissertation in both the LSE library and the LSE archive office." This inquiry most certainly put the school in a hard place because denial would be to outright question ProQuest's legitimacy. It would also out Tsai's wrongdoing and indicate that there were unlawful dealings going on at the school in its effort to broker the entry in the ProQuest database. However, if the school were to confirm ProQuest's legitimacy, then there would be no way forward. How does it make sense for ProQuest to have received information on Tsai's thesis in 2009 while the schools don't have anything at all? What are the odds that all of Tsai's records at the school went missing between 2009 and 2011? Did everyone who handled Tsai's information leave their posts between those years too? That wouldn't make any sense either, because someone at LSE helped Tsai change her ProQuest entry in 2020. So when faced with an email from this meticulous sender, the wrongdoers had no choice but to take a page from their own book. They got the ProQuest database entry information into the British Library. Now there were two credible databases with information on Tsai's thesis. They could work in tandem to uphold Tsai's lie. In June 2015, an entry for Tsai's thesis appeared in the British Library. Where does this speculation come from? We can compare the ProQuest and British Library entries. First, both the ProQuest and British Library entries initially only had Tsai's thesis title, nothing else. Second, the British Library at first had the author listed as Tsai IW, not Tsai Ing-wen, which is what the ProQuest database had. It's clear the information for the two entries came from the same source. Third, the thesis submission date is 1984, not 1983, which is what it was after Tsai's people altered it. All of this information is in line with what British Library authorities told us. They said that in June 2015, someone pointed out that the thesis was missing, so the library added it in. The schools needed to deal with the contradiction that ProQuest had an entry for Tsai's thesis, while the schools did not. So they quickly had the British Library add an entry to remove suspicion. How do we know that? Because we have the original ProQuest information from 2009. The ProQuest entry is completely different from what it looked like in 2009. After going over the first category of University of London files, it's time to look at the second category. These files address how LSE and the University of London came to a decision on publishing LSE's October 8, 2019 statement. Emily Brick divided these second category files into 4 different PDFs, but quantity doesn't mean quality. These files are from between October 15, 2019 and October 11, 2019. Most of the emails here do not include department names or job titles. Also, there isn't much discussion relevant to the requested topic. One email, however, was forwarded to the University of London's School of Advanced Study. The email only read, "I've seen it before." What's important is that the email was sent on October 11, 2019, after the school's statement had been published. Which department was responsible for drafting the statement? It's impossible to tell from these emails. Which department was responsible for the statement? Also impossible to tell. The emails also referred to IALS erroneously, just as Shi Fanglong did. This set of files proved what we already knew. The ICO was clear. It wanted the University of London to identify the department that was responsible for LSE's statement. If Emily Brick did not conceal anything, then this set of emails proved that people unrelated to LSE were the ones that wrote the statement and then published it in an obscure part of the school's website. The purpose of the statement was nothing more than to mislead people in Taiwan. What's funny here is that the only official school body to participate in the statement's discussion is University of London's School of Advanced Study. Someone from the school simply said, "I've seen it," and that means the statement has the school's blessing? How can any of this confirm Tsai Ing-wen's PhD? It's no wonder that Kevin Haynes didn't dare tell Dr. Lin where the statement came from. Most interestingly though, an early draft of the statement from October 8, 2019, 1:08 p.m. included, However, it has recently been discovered that the University of London Senate House Library are unable to find the hard copy of the thesis. If this line were included in the published statement, then the wrongdoers would have been in trouble, because not only does Tsai not have a hard copy of the thesis at the school, there's no digital version either. Furthermore, the thesis didn't disappear recently. It never existed. The inclusion of that line would have exposed LSE's plot to create a false narrative that schools had Tsai's thesis. That's why the line was removed. Finally, on October 10, 2019, 9:31 a.m., a person, most likely Shi Fanglong, sent an email after seeing all the criticism of the statement. That person sent the email to the School of Advanced Study, hoping someone could help endorse the statement, but it seemed no one wanted to help them. This international scandal has gone on for 37 years now. The wrongdoers are out of options with nowhere to hide. The final step for ThesisGate investigators now is to find out the identities of the redacted people in the email and bring them to justice. However, we still need your help. Continue sending Freedom of Information Act inquiries and help us find a way to extrapolate more information. For example, how might we be able to get files from school archives? Or how do we find out more about the University of London's Higher Degrees Office? How did the school get into the ProQuest database? Who was in charge of that initiative? All of that information is vital to breaking ThesisGate wide open.